Hi, Chris Duff over at Serious Land Capital, vacant land funding partner. Today wanted to provide an update on that Louisiana subdivide deal, some of the ways that we handle negotiations for the dirt work contracting. To quickly recap, those of you who aren't familiar, we had made a roughly $500,000 all-in purchase, including value add budget for about 32 acres in central Louisiana. The plan was to subdivide into three roughly equally sized parcels and then do full turnkey setups, clearing home sites, installing quality driveway, basically just leaving it to the end buyer to, lay down a foundation, build a house, but everything else is done for them. There's public water and electricity at the street. They'd have to do septic, but, no surprise out there. So some key updates is that we were expecting when we submitted the subdivide plan and survey over to the parish. Again, for those not familiar, parish is equivalent to a county. It's just the nomenclature within Louisiana. We were expecting that to take anywhere from like 4 to 6 weeks for approval, putting us closer to mid-May approximately. And we just happened to hit the parish at the right time and got full approval for our plan in about a week. So we were kind of scrambling. Okay, now we're like well over a month ahead of schedule here from where we thought we were going to be. And now we need to accelerate the dirt work quotes, the remaining ones that we were getting, and then also trying to sell one of the parcels over to the next door neighbor. That would save us extra costs from a value add side because they were just going to buy one of the child parcels as raw land, or at least that was the plan. So in terms of how we were handling the dirt work, so first when we got a soft quote on the expected cost for doing, the clearing sites and driveway way back in January was coming in at $123,000. We said, okay, let's budget in an extra 10% or so. And according to the contractor, he's like, yeah, there's no way it's going to go over another 10% for a hard quote. So, we raised enough to account for that extra 10%, plus a couple of extra grand. And so, post purchase of the property, post survey and subdivision approval, we had like roughly 137,000 left within the SPV LLC that was managing this particular property. The first dirt work contractor, when he came back and with a hard quote, and so they only were able to do soft quotes because before you have a lot of the boundary lines set for the final survey and the actual child parcels marked very clearly, it can be a little tricky and disorienting for contractors to fully account for what their final costs might be. So he came back at 140,000 flat. And so that was actually a little bit above that 10% buffer we built. And we would have had to inject another K of cash into the account. Not ideal, but not game breaking either if we were to go with that contractor. The key thing was, from a timing side, he could start within a few days when he had given us this quote less than 2 weeks ago, maybe 10 days or so ago. But again, we're not local to the area. Our realtor also had 3 other very solid dirt work contractors that we wanted to get competing quotes from. Plus, we could come in and kind of hardball a bit. It's like, okay, 140K, that's more than we were expecting. Can I, you guys come in below that and ideally still have like a short timeline? If they're going to be like a month or 2 months out, it's okay. We're fine paying for a little bit more to to get this job done. But it was kind of taking forever to get these remaining quotes, and there was some inclement weather, a lot of storms, so it was just tricky to align the scheduling and have the property be dry enough to sort out. Plus, we needed the surveyor to go back out there because he needed to lay down extra stakes to more clearly delineate where those child parcels were fully lined out so the contractors could give a hard quote. So, we had a little bit of back and forth there. The next door neighbor, I mean, you never know, right? Anybody's who's been in the land business, the other neighbor's like, oh yeah, interested. But when it actually comes down to making an offer in written form or want to put cash down, usually turns into a different story. So we weren't really counting on them, but it would have been a great option for us to still exit at the same relative margin in regard to our purchase price per acre, but reduce the expense out for doing value add on one of the parcels. Plus, it could get us a way faster sale, return capital even faster. That improves our internal rate of return metrics. So that was a great option if it actually worked out. So, a lot more back and forth, trying to figure out these contractors. And some just like weren't that reliable, or some saying, hey, I need to schedule my equipment to get out here and figure it out. And so finally, I was talking with the realtor more this week and figure out, okay, we need to really get this thing going here. So like we have until like today, this Friday, to come to a firm decision. So, we'll either pay that 1K if needed, if we can't get these other quotes out, or figure out, can we get better quotes in and people who can still, work on time to get this project started. And in the meantime, I'm like, back in my mind thinking again, like, all right, macro economy here. I'm already trying to fire sale a lot of my other portfolio. I'm still bullish about this asset. Like if any land asset's going to perform well in this economy, this Louisiana one is positioned about as well as you could be. But still, I want to get things on market and moved ASAP so I can reset underwriting criteria. This is like absolute top of mind for me. And with that in mind, we were able to get 2 other quotes in yesterday, and actually taking a step back from there. So this is something I regret right off the bat, just because I thought we were going to be able to get these other quotes in way faster. But the realtor was like, well, why don't we just go back to the guy who gave us the hard quote, see if he'll do it for a bit less, and to say, hey, we're ready to confirm and move. And like, okay, can we get him down to like 125K, take 15K off? It'll be in line with what he suggested on the soft quote a few months ago. And when we went back to him, the guy said, yeah, I can do that. Can shift some things around. And I guess he came back at a higher quote because he thought it was going to be like, one property, one child parcel done after the other, but it wasn't necessarily confirming all 3 done at once. So yeah, if you can do kind of a volume play here for land clearing where you can have all your equipment out at the same time, it costs way less to do that, then you can bring costs down. So I guess there was some disconnect there with what he thought was needed from our end. But the problem is, because we were delayed, an extra 10 days or so, maybe even a week of getting back to him and confirming his job. He had 3 other landowners put down deposits and get on his schedule. So, whereas he was ready to start within like a few days of us confirming his quotes, now he's like a month out until mid-May. So that pushed us way back with all of that time that we gained from the parish approval, plus again, navigating this economy. So that was pretty disappointing. And I regret not just trying to counter right off the bat and see if we could get to a more agreeable number and then just be ready to go. Nevertheless, it's like, yeah, you want to balance that, like being an outsider, not still potentially paying too much and not having other quotes in hand. So it was something that I'm going back and forth with. I probably would have just countered in retrospect right away, and I'll do that in the future. Especially when I think time is the more important issue, like in this environment versus an extra 10, 15K in terms of costs. So getting back to the other contractors, one came back at like 170K. Like, yeah, this is just way too high. And we had already prefaced again with these contractors, hey, you need to like be below 140, fight for your bid, otherwise we're not going to consider it. So he was out of the running. Then this other guy came back and was like, yeah, I know I can beat that, even that 125K reduced bid from the other first contractors. And I can actually do it even cheaper if I can give 2 quotes. And so I can do either, limestone for the driveways, limestone 57 to be specific, or wash rock. And wash rock, according to the realtor, like it's a slightly inferior material. If you're getting a lot of usage on, gravel roads with wash rock, it's not going to have quite the longevity as limestone will have. but it's more locally sourced. It's way easier to manage, and it's just going to be cheaper. Most importantly for me, which I really grilled the realtor on, is like, okay, is this going to make a material difference for end buyers? Like, are they going to notice that there's wash rock versus limestone, and like, are they going to decrease their bid for the property by like, 30, 40, 50K, whatever? Like, what's the discrepancy here? And he's like, no, I don't think it's going to be concerned. Most buyers, they're not going to note something like that. And for driveways, probably aren't going to have like the most heavy daily usage, in and out traffic. Wash rock versus limestone for driveways, like, it's not going to make as big of a difference, and it's going to be a very, very solid job. Clay underpacking and so forth. So he wasn't too concerned, and so like we ultimately came to the conclusion, okay, if it's like a 20K difference in terms of uh the quote for wash rock versus limestone, like, let's do the wash rock, and gives us extra margin to negotiate with buyers again in a tough economy. But if it's like a few $1,000 difference, then we'll just do the limestone. And so the guy came back and it was like pretty much exactly 20K. So it was 100K bid for using wash rock versus 118 for limestone. And again, confirmed with realtor, like, yeah, let's do the wash rock. That buys us, again, extra cash within the bank account. It's 25K below budget, actually, okay, below what's actually in our account, so we could actually distribute funds back to investors and decrease the preference that we're paying out too, because it's our last expected expense on this property outside of holding costs, which would be below $1,000 per year if we really needed it for property taxes. So ultimately, we're getting that set up. Plus, this contractor could get scheduled within 2 weeks, probably even sooner. But it looks like, again, weather is not going to be cooperative. It's going to be wet again over this next week. So it looks like he could start on May 1st, pending additional weather related issues, and get that ball rolling. So now we're back to being ahead of schedule, under budget, and feeling good from that standpoint. Plus, within the contract, we're building in a cancellation for the southernmost child parcel, which is the one that the neighbor had an interest in, so that, hey, we can start putting some pressure on. We start at the northernmost parcel and like showing these neighbors, oh yeah, these guys are serious. They're actually doing the dirt work and everything now. They're not just talking. And then it's like, okay, now or never. Hey, you're either going to make an offer on this or we're going to do the work. And if they do decide to make an offer, then we can get our deposit back and not have to pay for that third child parcel and just exit out of that one with a earlier sale. Or if the neighbor doesn't want to play ball, then we proceed as planned and still do the value add. So that gives us additional optionality for possible exit solutions. So hopefully this is helpful for you, how we thought through it. A couple things I would do differently, but mostly I think it's worked out in our favor so far. We'll see how the actual exit goes. I'm going to be thinking about this parcel day in and day out until we fully exit out of this thing. But that is the latest. With that in mind, seriousland.capital for any of your funding needs within the land space, and then Land Daily Diligence Facebook group for zero cost review of your land deals. Remember, you can check out the replay. Myself, Dave Dennison, Justin Sleva hosted a virtual unconference hot seat session. Really well attended, great comments. Thought it went about as well as we could expect. So if you want to check that replay, it's up on the Facebook group. Plus, again, there's only 11 spots left for unconference in August, so hope to see you there if you're at all interested in joining us. So 59 slots filled up. 70 is the absolute cap, so hope you are grabbing one of those last slots. And then landpricer.ai, even more great feedback from some early beta testers in terms of utility here. Again, we're speeding it up ASAP. Can't wait to release this new version. I couldn't be more pumped for that. TBD on actual launch here. With that in mind, subscribe and share. Take care, everybody. Until tomorrow. Bye.